game-changing discussions on the big ideas that shape our thinking. This is One-to-One.
Affectionately known as TK, Tunde Kelani is one of Africa's most revered filmmakers. For more than 5 decades, his lens has framed some of our most important stories and shaped the soul of African cinema. From the political allegory of Saworoide to the literary elegance of Koshegbe, his work has preserved language, memory, and identity through generations, carrying African storytelling to the world with uncommon authenticity and grace. Tunde Kelani, welcome to One-to-One.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll dive straight in. I will begin by framing the context within which we will have our conversation. Okay, and I'll begin from a very unusual place. Orumuru, 1982 Nigerian comedy film. I remember seeing that as a boy at the National Theatre. I remember, in fact, where I was sitting at the National Theatre when I saw that. Directed, of course, by the great Ola Balogun. Written and produced by Moses Olaya Babasala. Exploring the impact and consequences of a get-rich-quick scheme. And of course, it makes the point that those were your beginnings. You started out in photography and cinematography long before becoming a film director. Of course, you went to the London Film School.
That's right.
But I'd like to know, at what point did you realize that storytelling, not just filmmaking, would become your life's work?
Well, it was interesting. In hindsight, I believe that I just needed a medium to share my cultural experience because I had observed everything in the environment that I found myself. And everybody told me stories. Even my peers, they picked on me. Sometimes they told me, so if anybody died in the community, they would tell me that the person was still around, that if I wanted to doubt it, give me a needle and say, you go and poke the corners of the room and you see what will happen to you. And I dared not, so I started to learn from that point. I soaked in everything I came in contact with. And so I started, they told me stories, all sorts of stories, and they thought about other world, Iwi, Oro, and things like that. I asked my grandfather one day if he had seen one, and he said yes, he had seen one. What did it look like? He tried to describe it to me. So my imagination just from that point. But what happened was within a few years, our education started in Yoruba language. All subjects were taught in Yoruba, including English language. And the school at that time had a library. And my friend, the late Dr. Bolade Oshinawa, was the librarian. So we just read everything up, anything we found in the library we read. And so in a few years, I entered the world of Diofagua. All the great imagination and everything. And then I started to read back to my grandfather at night, spread a mat, lie on my belly, and read to them. In return, I was telling them unbelievable stories, reading it back to them.
I had reversed it.
Reversed.
Interesting. But I'd like to talk about you and your beginnings, your formal training in film. So long before becoming a director, you trained extensively in photography and cinematography. I'm interested in learning how those disciplines shaped the way you see the world today. You see it, I'm sure, through a particular lens that is unique to Tunde Kelani.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, how did I get into photography in the first place? Because I didn't know anybody who was really a photographer. But I was conscious of what a camera could do. And so when I left secondary school, I returned to Lagos to my parents. And by that time, I was maybe 18 or so. And I got a job, but photography just was on my mind. So after working for about a year, I told my father I wasn't going to go university. No. I said it was going to be a waste of my time, that I would go straight into apprenticeship. So I wrote around for the photographers who were practicing then, Uncle Peter Obey, Jackie Phillips, Studio Billy Rose, and then Dr. Kubanjo. So it was Dr. Kubanjo that replied and invited me for an interview. And when I sat, talked to me, and I told him what I wanted, and he said, yes, I can train you for 3 or 5 years, and after that you go to Germany and all that. But he explained that he was not going to pay me at all. So I said, yes, I agreed. And he said, no, not so fast. You have to go and call your father, because all these young people, you have a school start. So I told my father and said, no, you will go and see him, that he knew him before in Oshogbo. And so we settled. That's how I started. But again, I'd read stories, books, literature, everything I could find. Even in Lagos, I was member of the library in Ebutimeta and then on the island. And besides that, I've seen every film that came into Lagos. My favorite cinema was in Central Cinema in Ebutimeta. And occasionally I would venture. We had about 4 or 5 cinemas around the mainland. And these are neighborhood cinemas. You didn't have to ride Okada to reach them. Yes, we just walked. Central was my favorite, but occasionally I venture completely out to Pangrove area where we had Metro Cinema, and then Rialto, the cheaper, at the back of Metro Cinema. Occasionally I would go into the island to Plaza Cinema, and if I got a new girlfriend, I would go to Roxy Cinema.
You had to impress.
I just had to impress, and so on. So after a year, I still photography. Something told me, no, I prefer not one frame, one picture at a time, that I could do several frames. That would be motion pictures. So I was determined. I changed. And I was lucky because Western Nigerian television was at that time advertising Daily Times for trainee cine cameramen, and I applied. So 15 of us went for the aptitude test in WAEC, Yaba. 4 of us were invited for the interview at the broadcasting house in Ibadan, and I was the only one selected. So that's how my fortune changed. And in 1970 September, I walked into Western Nigerian television, WNTV, WNBS, PO Box 1460, Agodi Ibadan. So that's where my career really started. So I believe that from that point, I was a professional. And that was the best foundation I could have had, because I trained under the best broadcast managers in Africa at that time. They became my mentors, and I was on my way.
Interesting. Fascinating, in fact. But I'd like to ask you, we've just been talking about a very rich, deep history, where you're coming from. You've been creating serious cinema long before the name Nollywood emerged.
Yeah, that's right.
How do you interpret the evolution of Nigeria's film industry through your lens in the last 40 years?
I think it's simple, because when I came into broadcasting, we were shooting films every day because there's no video. And perhaps the news content, drama inserts, and program we filmed and brought into the broadcast chain at that time. And it was at that time that Kongi Service was released. And for the first time, these are Yoruba people on the screen, and our uncle, Francis Olale, was the producer, of these films with the company Capening that he started, so already all this blown, my fantasy and imagination that yes, I think we can do it, we could do it. So it's sort of, these are people that I knew and so on, but knowing physically is different from seeing them on the screen because they look like gods, Sometimes actors are transformed. And I'm coming from several influences, by the way, because I'm a fan of the Yoruba traveling theater. I have at least, you see, they started, traveling on stage. That's something on its own. And then they went into television, they went to radio, and they went into television. And after their television experience, they veered off into filmmaking and then started to make films as well. Baba
Ogunde's story.
It was Adilove.
Adilove.
First of all, started with Dola Dipo and all of them. And then they made this own film, and I was privileged to work, on his movies as well. So he's one of my mentors also. And after that, Ogunde, went into film, and I became a mentee under Ogunde. And if Ogunde invites you and you work assisting the British technicians that came, and Ogunde invites you a second time, you are made for life because it's already known. You are, some qualities is noticed and decided to spend his time bringing you up and all that. I've had so many mentors, and influences. And so it was, for me, it was an evolution. We went from, then, of course, Ogunde shot his films in 35mm. He brought British technicians. Olabarogun shot in 35mm as well, brought this Brazilian, South American technicians. And I worked with all of them. So, this again was giving me sort of the experience that I can appropriate, because from London Film School, I knew that I had to find a way of appropriating technology, because nobody's going to give us £5 million to make a movie, not even £200,000. So we have to find a way. So we started to shoot 16mm. And working with the Yoruba Traveling Theatre, I must have shot more than 20 of their own films as well. And that process, I recognized their style, which is small stage. And I tried to break it down in cinematic terms, which was another development for me also. And this is clearly different from films that I produce. Even now, you could, if you pay attention, you could see these styles. You can recognize them and so on. So there are so many factors that, I've been asked, which of the Hollywood directors influenced you? I have been influenced by global cinema, Japanese, Chinese, Indian,
Right.
but more importantly, by the Yoruba Traveling Theatre. So I've been able to combine all these styles and come out with a style that is unique to me and my cultural experiences and so on. So when I come in contact with a material, the images start to come and I begin to see the film in my head. So if in my lifetime I saw Kola Ogunmola on stage in the Pan One Dream Card in 1960 something, and then I've watched Dola Dipo on stage, I've watched Ogunde on stage, I've worked on Yadijobi on stage and worked with them. Then you can have answer to the kind of style that I can bring into 21st century.
Absolutely, absolutely. You've been involved with all of this, and now we have this vibrant market here in Nigeria. This film industry we call Nollywood, but really it stands on the shoulders of people like you.
Well, I think really that it's not as vibrant as we thought, and when Nollywood came, all the euphoria of being the second largest in the world of what? Because at that time, the popular Nollywood was based on home video technology, analog, which was ridiculous in all its senses. But anyway, we started from rock bottom and tried to find our way up. You see, Nollywood is in flux, it's still evolving. And after all, when I was in the film school, London Film School in 78, Nigeria was not considered a serious filmmaking nation. No, our time had not come, But behind it all, we had to continue to improve our game and, work on the deficit in infrastructure, a lot of capacity building, training, and all of that. And, by and by, we started to come up with products that attracted, the whole world. So all that time, it was easy to see that where we could build on that popularity and publicity. After all, if you look at the infrastructures, America has about 40,000 screens. India has about 12 or 13,000 screens. And total screens in Nigeria is still under 500.
Yes.
So where is this number thing coming from? But it's okay. We embrace it. We take it. That means that we are going, and I'm so happy. See, what I like about Nollywood is about the diversity. Everybody, small businesses, just doing their own thing, finding their market, and so on. More importantly, I think we owe everything to our audiences who have stood by us and supported us, because, and we should never take them for granted because they encouraged us. They know that there was a lot of flaws in what we were doing, but they, for some reason, referred the worst Nollywood film to the best of American films, at that period in time. So they, and at that time, the government had not even taken notice. It was the popularity, the sovereignty, the soft diplomacy that finally carried the government along. And now, businesses are coming in, new models, and so on. But we cannot, until Africa generally develop our own platforms, something we can own.
Yes.
I think that we still have a lot of work to do.
So let's talk about the camera and the voice of social conscience. So I'd like us to talk about Saworoide for a bit.
Right.
1999.
Right.
A film written again by
Ishola.
Arguably one most politically symbolic and influential films in Nigerian history. Certainly one of your most iconic works. A biting allegory on power, tradition, corruption, and governance, and also tradition. I'd like to ask you, did you know at the time you were enacting this statement that that it would outlive generations? And were you conscious of the cultural, the political statement that you were making at the time?
Well, it started in a strange way because Akim Ishola told me that there was a drummer in his village, somewhere in Akinyele local government in Ibadan, and he was one of the best drummers in Yoruba land. And I believed him and decided that we should do a documentary about about him. And was this, we were thinking about just finding a direction for this documentary when one morning President Akintola called me and said, TK, wahala ma dey. Prof, like this is cool the drama passed on. And it was devastating. But then we started to think about actually making a film using the talking drum as a voice for the people. So it started to take shape, and suddenly we saw it and how we are going to put this story together and link it together, and just followed our feelings and made Saworoide with modest means. In fact, it's the camera that I use, DVC 9000, is ridiculous, but it's I myself am surprised about how it's about the longevity,
Yes.
and so on.
So to what extent do you feel that film in particular has become a prophetic social commentary on the state of Nigeria's political evolution?
It's easy to predict because we are not being truthful, because I don't think we are developing. I'm also hopeful of a process of reorientation because somewhere along the way, I think we missed our way. And it's about time that I don't know, maybe it's too late, maybe not. I don't know what could happen because we saw it coming. And sometimes, even if I talk among family and friends, people just say, but TK, you were saying this thing 25 years ago.
Yes.
This is what you were saying 20 years ago, and so on. And I remember my friend, family, yesterday, we were childhood family friends until he passed on a few years ago. And what he says in conversation, I'm worried. Because sometimes you just said, but I think TK, the way Nigeria is going, àwọn tó wà láyé wọ́n tún máa envy àwọn tó wà lọ́run. And that the people who are living will actually envy those who had passed.
Of course, we're talking about the preservation of Yoruba culture. Of course, that is very, very important to Yoruba people, and it is a significant part of a wider, a broader picture that we call the national consciousness. How important is it for culture generally, all cultures, to be preserved?
I work, interact with intellectuals as well who have proved that there's been no African country that developed with a foreign language. And that is key. And for me, it was no brainer. I knew what I was going to do and that my work was going to be mainly for the Yoruba, 35 million, 40 million in the homeland, and even spread in pockets all over the world. What else? What words would I do? After all, we have subtitled our films in English, French, and we have Saworoide in Portuguese. And subtitled in Portuguese already, and so on. So I wonder how Akintola would feel if they were alive now. And I miss them. You understand? I miss them because those were genuine, patriotic Yoruba people who went away from first degree. Akintola had his first degree was in French. Adiba Fale's first degree was in French also, but they just left and then came back and started their scholarship in the language and culture. And there are books and books that are part of our heritage, which we no longer read. Nobody will read them. The children, we never read them, and so on.
Yeah.
And you see, And our survival, our economic turnaround is on our intangible heritage. There's no doubt about it.
So after 5 decades of work, tell me, what continues to inspire you? You're here, you're hungry, you're still making film. What's the secret? What continues to inspire you?
Well, I think it's my passion. I have a great passion for what I do. And in a way, I think that I can see sometimes in the future. And I'm busy at the moment because I try to be on top of the technology at all times. And we are in an exciting technological era, and I see the possibilities of what can be done and try as much as anybody who is willing, and I'm open, because I think we can redefine how we tell our stories.
So we've already talked about the fact that there are so many untapped stories still to tell. So many literary works from the belly of our culture that needs to be told. And I dare say not just in Yoruba culture, across Nigerian, across.
I'm sorry to take it out of your mouth because I'm a bit disappointed because we have not even reflected the unity in diversity, our national slogan, because the films have not really reflected our diversity. We should see all shades of the rainbow of what the Nigerian nation is. Of course, when there is disorder, where there is chaos and disorder in the society, the arts suffer. But I want to believe this is only temporary. And in good time, I think we start the reorientation and march towards our goal.
Tunde Kelani, thank you for joining us on One to One.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Pleasure. Thank you.